Welcome to another Humpday Q&A with
really
me, Sam Lightfoot, Scott Stoll with his big hand. All right, let's get through some slides, then we get on with some questions. Yes. Let's do that. Right, where are we? Welcome to the stream. Do's and don'ts. We've got Scott.
Be nice.
Quickly, let's get through them.
Be respectful, constructive. It's YouTube, not Reddit. Don't post anything that's adult, rude, offensive. Come on, folks, common sense. This isn't the place to advertise your business or scream, I need a job. Don't post the same question over and over. I mean, you can, but the thing is that every time we see it, we're going to move it to the bottom of the list. So if you keep asking, we're never going to get to it. Harassment of any kind is not tolerated. Come on. Failing this, you'll be blocked from here. You'll be blocked from Slack. You'll be blocked from a whole lot of places because we share ban lists. And don't forget, have fun.
Have fun. It's the speciality. So my name is Simon Lightfoot, Flutter community leader and CTO at Dev Angels London. And you can get me on Twitter at Dev Angels London. Scott.
I am Scott Stoll, community leader, organizer, GDG Cleveland, Code Monkey, and something about sharing a desk under the stairs at Dev Angels London with Dobby, who is our unpaid intern.
And let's bring on our first person here, Randall.
Hey, hi everybody.
Every show now.
It seems like it. It seems like I'm kind of stepped up to be the 2.5 slot instead of just the 3 slot. So that's good. I don't even know what that means. It's too early for me to understand all this stuff. I am a Dart and Flutter Google developer expert, which means I spend a lot of time answering y'all's questions. I'm going to be helping with answering questions today. And the other way I'm going to be helping today is that I am watching for your questions in the chat room. And if you're on the live chat, and why aren't you? Why don't you come on live? Okay, if you're in the live chat room, to put a Q in front of your question, I will note that for our team, and we will answer the question in the order that we receive them. We do get to all the questions that we say we're going to get to pretty much every week. So be here and ask.
Yeah, all the ones we say we're going to get to, there will come a point where we cut it. And we're looking to try and stay around 90 minutes, which the way that we determine this, we look at how many questions are in the queue, and then we divide the number of minutes left by that. If the answer is 2, we cut questions off because that's 2 minutes per question to finish what we got.
Yeah. If we can ever get 2 minutes per question, that'd be great. Right.
We never get down to that. Yes, it's true.
Yeah, really.
And I forgot last week to mention that. I just want to bring this up on the stream here. There is the call for papers for FlutterCon in July in Berlin. It's open. And myself and some others are helping to organize this event. Go check out the website when you get 5 minutes, fluttercon.dev. That's my sales pitch, and I've done it now. That's it. Out the way. And we have a guest with us. Swav, you want to come to the stage? There he is.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, now you see me. Yeah.
I hear you have a dash behind you somewhere.
No, it's not dash.
Oh.
It's Flutter. Where is Flutter on this picture? No, you can't see this Flutter. Now, can you see the Flutter?
No.
We can see your tape deck.
Is there somewhere behind you? But
that's Flutter. So
is it on the tape deck somewhere? Okay.
So
like tape deck.
No. Flutter is a distortion which tape decks do. So if you try to
okay, now I can make an aeronautical engineering joke about Flutter too. But,
no, I draw the line. Swav, do you want to introduce yourself? Sorry.
I'm a Flutter GTE. I'm a Flutter lead at Kinecarta. A long-time Android developer as well. and I specialize mostly in actually leading teams and helping people how to lead teams as well. So yeah, if you have a questions like these, it's also a place to actually get an answer. What should I bring to my Flutter project?
Yeah.
Money.
There's also that kind of also comes into like, money, right? I guess that also involves architecture and things like that as well, right? Like how best to approach problems. Danielle will be joining us, but a little bit more into the stream. She couldn't make it at the start, so hopefully we'll see her soon.
I'd like to add one more thing real quick. It's keep in mind, Simon's a community leader. I'm a community leader. Randall's a GDE. Swav is a Flutter expert, and you are a GDE also, aren't you?
Yeah.
Swav is also a GDE. You notice how many people did I say work for Google?
Yeah.
No
Zero.
one here works for Google.
You see this nice heart here.
It's very important to make that distinction because we don't want people to misunderstand or be deceived.
This is what we want.
We are
for.
with the community.
Yeah.
I see a question asking about full impeller support. You know what? Can you watch the repo and tell me when you see it's coming? Because we don't know any more than you do. The team doesn't tell us all the internal stuff.
That's actually kind of a good point, right? Because, whoa, am I getting an echo of someone? No, I think I wasn't. Anyway, there is that good point that what would you call it? It's open source, right? The whole entire project's open source, and they have trouble keeping under wraps when they want to do some sort of like nice sort of show off because it's all there. It's all in the repo somewhere, right? So you talk about like Impeller. I know that
they don't have like magical hidden branches that they tell me about anyway. It's just master, dev, beta, and stable.
Yeah.
So it's all there for you to find if you go look.
Well, that's it. And like, you can go look at the commit history. You can go look at all the references to the different commits. You can go look up them, read the history, see what they're about, see the code changes. This is all for you to all up for grabs. And it's one of the troubles that they have because obviously when they wanted these shows, they can't really keep it hidden for long. So, but yeah, as I know for the moment, it's because they've got Impeller now. Is it alpha, beta? I can't remember what they said it was in the last.
It was in preview. Now preview is something that they're experimenting with and is not even an alpha yet. That's the reason they were able to keep Impeller under wraps.
I think it's one step.
It wasn't even there yet.
Because you do experimental and then preview, then alpha. I think it was something like that. I feel like because they've had like Impeller work experimenting for quite some time, but it wasn't there for like consumption by an end user. It's still being built, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Preview is that kind of like
preview are.
I think they're basically the same sort of thing.
Available to us.
Marketing terms.
No, you can. So right now you can enable Impeller on iOS builds and maybe Mac builds, I forget. But the point here is that they want you to do this. So if your app currently compiles for iOS, go enable Impeller, see if there's any issues. If there's any issues, file them. Because right now, this is where we get to make a difference as a community, right? This is where we get to file those bugs and get them fixed before Impeller goes out. And we get to make them
release full support until the bugs are worked out, and they can't work out the bugs until people find them.
Yeah. So the more we can give them, the faster it's going to be developed, the more comprehensive the result is going to be. And at the end of the day, we all want Impeller to come out with like 0 bugs, right? I mean, that's the ideal scenario. We're never going to get that, but you know what I mean? It's close to 0 as possible, right? And at that, for that to happen, we need to test out Impeller on our builds, on our apps, and report any problems. They actually found one recently with like a text waiting problem. And they got in there, it was raised, tagged, fixed, and released. And I think it's in one of the point releases of 3.7 now. So it's like, they're actively working on this. They want to get Impeller out. So just beware. Yeah. Anyway, right, I'll shut up. Come on. Right.
Yeah. Speaking of that, like there was a Flutter release yesterday that was only like 2 days after the previous release. So it only had 4 commits in it. But that's kind of the sort of dedication that the release team has to be able to get stuff out, get it in your hands, get people working with it so that we can see what needs to be fixed before it's all shiny and clean on the final release, on the first stable release.
Hot fixes can get merged pretty quick.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So let's
man.
actually just take a look. Yeah, fixed path fetching in Flutter JS. There's obviously there's a problem with Flutter Web 1.3.7. Allows select cases to be numbered. I guess that's something to do with something somewhere. Yeah.
Yep.
So there's these things are active.
I have
Right.
a tool that downloads mirrors of about 20 different repos that I'm following, including the Dart SDK and the Flutter SDK. I run that tool maybe 4 or 5 times a day just because I can just run it in a spare window somewhere. And it's amazing. I just did it just a moment ago. And the most recent commit to the Dart SDK was only like 5 minutes ago. The most recent commit to the Flutter SDK is about 15 minutes ago. So this stuff is constantly changing. And again, this is why you can't hide anything, because it's all in the repo right there. Everything they're
Reminds
doing
me of the days
hour
of
by
Master
hour.
when there was only Master, and people were
This is what I was
developing
just
production
thinking.
apps on Master, and you would come in first thing in the morning and update, and then you would eat lunch and you would update, and then at 2 o'clock in the afternoon you would update.
Yep.
I'm just thinking about that, right? Has it actually changed? Like, I know it's still active, but now we don't work off of Master. We don't really kind of feel that, but it still works just as much, just as hard. In fact, they've got more devs than ever before on the team.
It depends what you're doing,
it's probably
right?
updating even faster. But
If
you said,
if you'll be working on something really important for your client, you won't be working on Webmaster, because then on a very important meeting you want to show up, actually something will not work. Usually it would not work. So that's you switching your branches. I mean,
it was kind of funny when Master would update so often. You would have a working build and then it would break, and all you had to do was go to the bathroom, come back, re-update, and your code works, because it was changing that fast.
I'm talking about code change. Talking about code change. Before we get on to some questions here, I just want to just say that there is this bot called there's a Twitter called Twitter bot called Flutter Releases, and we get tweets. And it's also Mastodon, and we get tweets for when new versions come out, so you can be notified. There's a nice way of doing it. There's also the official Flutter announcements, which gives you breaking changes and what's gone into these latest builds. There's also another bot called Flutter Merge, if you guys are not aware of this. And this actually gives you, this is kind of cool, little screenshots of the PRs that are getting merged in. And this kind of also gives you that kind of like overview of when things are actually changing, right? So you can see what's actually happened. Fixed formatting in tab controller, right? And obviously there's specific ones in here that are going to be have any sort of relation, right? Like you need to know what's going on. But I think there's some of these that when you see one, you're like, actually, this makes a big difference. Anyway, right. So moving on, back to the show. Sorry, I'll just share that.
One last thing before we get started. I promise I will be painting it with pretty colors at some point soon, but there you go. Did you Google it first?
Oh, nice.
Someone's got a 3D printer.
Been having fun with it. The One Ring, 3D printed.
The one ring to roll them all. Nice. All right, then let's
bind them.
Yeah, and and just a quick reminder, make sure you put your questions in the chat with a Q in front, and then our question magician Randall can identify them for the team.
I'm doing that as we speak.
Let's see. Well, we've covered this one. What's the over under the show length? About 60 to 90 minutes. We're hoping for
10 hours.
We don't want to go. 10 hours. Oh God. Do you remember the time when we very first started Humpday on Zoom, and there was like 8 hours?
It was all day.
8 hours.
All day. What Humpday started as was a Zoom meeting where anybody could come in all day on Wednesday, and we would be able to give them one-on-one help. Since then, it's grown to the point where we just can't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
But
hopefully it's a nice thing about this kind of format. Hopefully this kind of gets that. It has a nice mix of one-on-one, so we can directly answer someone that's live. And then we also get the answer gets recorded, and it means it's out there in the public domain so that people can then watch it and get that answer. because one of the reasons why me and Randall, we spoke of this before, but we answer questions in Stack Overflow and places like that, or we don't like answering DMs about questions, is because no one gets the answer, right? We don't want to answer. It's not just that we don't want to answer the same thing multiple times, but if I'm going to answer it, there's so much knowledge that can be gained by other people. So we'd rather answer in public channels like Stack Overflow, places where once someone posts the answer, it can be searched, it can be found, it can be answered. But we don't not going around the merry-go-round and roundabout all the time, So
Discord's a great place too, because everything's there from day one in the Discord and easily searchable. So it's a great resource as well.
Matt, I just pulled your question out of the queue because I put the link. It's on Thingiverse.
Okay. All right, moving on. Next question. Gabriel, any tips for optimizing custom render boxes for best performance?
Don't calculate what you don't have to.
Yeah.
That's.
I mean,
Essentially, if you have something like you would get as a function and it would calculate you something, and you could hard code it and you reuse it, that's perfect. There's one funny thing is like you can't make a square root of 2 as a constant because it has to be calculated. But you can essentially calculate on your calculator, put as a constant, and it is there. It's already optimization. You don't have to essentially calculate anymore. You just read the byte. That's it, done.
Go ahead.
And that's one thing. Also, the other thing is that invalidate when necessary. That was another thing that I don't have to invalidate it. Actually, it's the same thing. I'm drawing slightly different way.
There's also like that kind of another thing you might want to look into is so I just on the talking about the render pipeline for a second. The composition of the UI is built out of layers. Those layers contain multiple widgets, and each layer really has its own canvas. So when a widget renders, you get given a canvas and an offset. That is the canvas you want to draw to, and the offset in the layer that your widget gets painted to. This is kind of key because if any of the widgets in the layer need to get painted, it repaints the entire layer because they might overlap each other in some way. Because composition happens between layers at a later stage. Anyway, so the key here is that the reason why I'm mentioning this is that a repaint boundary, you might have heard this term, a repaint boundary widget. What it does is you wrap that in your widget, and what it does is it makes a layer that surrounds your widget. And this means your widget, when it repaints, only affects itself. It doesn't affect any other ones. And it gets a composite layer. That has a memory cost attached to it. So you don't want to just do it for too much. But at the same time, it means that if you've got something that you're drawing on every frame, so this is why list views, I think the default list view is to add repaint boundaries to every list item. Because if there's list items like animate or repaint, you don't want to repaint all of the widgets in the entire list. And there's a few other situations where they're good. But anyway, if you're doing some sort of animation or effect, a repaint boundary can actually help with performance, especially of rendering. There's actually if you run, just a quick tip, if you use repaint boundaries, there's a flag in the debugger, in the debug inspector, whatever, that tells you, it literally says, when you pause it, this widget, it tells you if this repaint boundary is actually necessary, which is really nice. So it tells you is it actually doing any worthwhile job? It can calculate that. And if it's not, then it's basically recommending you remove it, which is kind of handy as well. But yes, so repaint boundary. And as Swav said, like paint. So the idea of render box is to paint something, right? It's fundamentally, it is the same as a widget on Android. It does pointer, it does hit testing, it does layout, it does a bunch of stuff, manages its children, right? But the idea of what we do in Flutter is to try and break those dependencies. And so we do mouse over here, hit testing over here, rendering over there. So for most use cases, render boxes are used for painting. And if you're doing painting, that's it. You're painting something of state that you already have. So the idea is, let's say you had to paint a random set of circles on the screen, right? Silly, I know, but you get my point. You've got a random set of circles. Now, what you could do in your paint routine is do a for loop and calculate the random position for each one and paint it. Problem with that is now you're doing this calculation and this looping and whatever else you need to do when you don't need to, right? Then maybe that working out that random number is really complicated, right, for your particular circumstance. Well, what Swav is saying is that in layout or some other phase of build, or just as a one-off, you run a function which generates the random numbers, stores them in a list, and then in Paint, you then read that list and position and paint them. This makes Paint completely dumb. There's no logic in there. It just paints what you've already told it to, your state. And that's the real key, sort of like for optimization of any painting, is make it do nothing that it needs not do. That also includes painting, to be clear. Like, don't like you paint what's on your canvas, but if it's not visible, there's no point painting it. So there's other optimizations you can do there where won't go into now, but you can calculate if it's going to be visible on the screen and remove it, and not even paint it.
So to rephrase a little part of that, if you've got to do heavy logic, it's better to just do it up front and store it maybe in something like a list. And then as each frame is rendered, all it has to do is go snatch it out of the list and remove at, wherever that was in the list. And then it can just pull it right out like a queue.
Yeah, you offload it essentially. Yeah, from a loop. You offload it from the loop, so it's essentially there as a static value that you provide, and that's it.
This is a good example of, just to quickly mention, this is the trade-off in all programming. You have CPU one side, memory the other, right? And ideally you're down the middle and you're kind of using those resources in the best possible way. But obviously, doing something really CPU intensive is going to be over here. And if you don't want to do something CPU intensive, then you're using a lot of memory. It's kind of like that kind of vice versa kind of thing, right? Like, yeah, it gets complicated. Anyway, I'll shut up. Right.
Well, one other thing on this is that Victoria and Camille did a really good talk on the render box for Flutter Vikings.
Oh, yeah.
And that is right here. So there he is. I'm not sure how chat. Yeah, I've got it already.
Okay.
But yes, we all had a lot of fun together at Flutter Vikings. And they did a fantastic job in the face of some really interesting adversity. They could not get the audio to work in that room for almost an hour, and finally got it fixed about 60 seconds before Victoria had to take the mic. So never let them see you sweat.
No, I do remember running around at that conference trying to get all the live streams working, and I didn't talk to anyone for most of it. Anyway,
we were running around handling broken things, us and Majid. And the sign of a successful event is not that things don't go wrong. Things always go wrong. The sign of a successful event is nobody noticed.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. All right. Next question here. I'm going to quickly answer this one. Yes, there are many other ways to communicate with us other than YouTube. And in fact, there's a whole load of ways of communicating on flutter.dev/community. There's a Discord. I think, is Gitter still on there? I don't know. There's a Discord.
I think it is.
Gitter community Slack. Gitter. Like, there's a Reddit. There's
still
Reddit,
active,
subreddit.
Oh my God.
Everything. Yeah.
Gitter has been swallowed into Matrix or whatever. It's still there, but it's still a ghost town. I wouldn't recommend anybody new go there. It used to
move so fast you could never keep up.
In fact, what I usually do when somebody asks a question there, which is about once a day, I just post a link to Flutter Dev Community and say, go look at the Discord. You're going to find many, many more people there. There's like 8,000 people on the Discord right now, and I'm not exaggerating in terms of numbers. It's
How many
huge.
we got on the Slack? I'll have a quick look.
20,000 plus last time I looked. I'll check it.
See?
Really?
Yeah, definitely not ghost towns. The opposite of that.
No, in fact, I try to clean up junk, people posting stuff where it doesn't belong. But it's hard to keep up.
Yep. I when I see it, I delete it. I'm pretty good at
22,348.
Yep. That's literally what I was about to read. There you go.
Yep.
Right.
Cool.
All right.
There are a couple of people there who might be able to give you a hand.
Yeah, just a few.
Like me. Just a few, yeah.
Marius,
interesting question.
How can I get a local offset for a draggable that was accepted in a drag target? Currently, the height of the app bar influences the DY offset value. Interesting.
Mhm.
I
it.
don't. Are you sure? I'm gonna say first of all, I'd say, are you sure it's the height of the app bar and not the height of the inset
Safe area.
screen inset? Because that would probably be about the same height on some devices. Either way,
Talking about status bar height?
yes, that is
No.
no. On some devices with the camera there, they get the cutout. It gets quite large, the same height as an app bar.
Well, that would be
even if that
operating
wasn't
within
the
a
case.
safe area.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying that the calculation might be off, right? But even if that wasn't the case, there's no reason why you can't get the local position. I'm kind of curious how he's getting the position at the moment. To be honest, it's been a long time since I've had to use drag ball and drag target.
I really like the way this question is done. This is not a please help me write my code, which I can't stand those, but it is about the SDK, and it's a really intelligent question about a difficult topic.
This would be a great question for Discord. The UI and layout channel on Discord is perfect for this because there's a lot of really smart people there, and you can interact with them and provide additional details. The problem with doing it here is that we can only just speculate anything beyond what you just wrote. And sometimes our speculations are spot on. Sometimes, we wonder.
Sometimes
we don't know.
Chat speculations.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Hey, don't compare us to that yet. You're not taking my job yet.
So yeah, you got your draggable, right? How's it? I'm trying to remember how you use it, right? So draggable is a widget, your data, and then I'm guessing that your drag target is going to get a notification. Drag anchor update, on drag started. On drag completed is just a callback. Interesting. So this will tell you if this item was dragged, but it doesn't tell you much of anything else.
The drag target has to have a callback too for when you would land on it.
Yeah, you would think so, right?
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, but that's not here. That drag target. There we go. Oh, there's
Didn't we look at using this in URL?
Yeah, hang on. Drag target builder, drag target accept.
On accept.
Yeah, that's just social
data.
Except with details, drag target details.
Ooh.
Offset. So this is the offset he's talking about, right? That's
Yeah.
Global position. Oh yeah, yes. So what you need to do, this is what you call global position. You need to convert it to a local position, and you do that with a render object. So the line of code you're missing, which I'll get for you and pop it in the chat, is you find your so if you've got a state, you can get the context from it, and you say find render object. I'll type out a bit, but I'll go look it on here, look it up on here for you. But basically, you find your build context. So you want to know the local position of how it's relative to, of what this offset is relative to. And inside here, you'll find a function called find render object. This function will turn back the render object for this build context. Once you have that, on a render, you can convert, you just as your render object as a render box. This will work most of the time. I won't go into details about slivers right now. And then on render box, there's a lovely function. And what you're looking for is, I'm just going to search for it here, global to local. And this magical function does exactly what you're asking. How do you get it? And you give it the local offset, the one you got from dragging. And this will give you it relative to the local of the locality of this widget. This is global position screen to local position of this context that you're on. Does that hopefully help? But that's exactly what you need to do. And I'll just type it out in and pop it in the chat for you. Yeah. Straightforward. There you go. It's in the YouTube chat. That should. Well, yeah, you double. No, it would be an offset.
Cool.
Right, there you go. Right, next question, I guess. Clicked a little bit, just use fire. Right, moving on.
We have somebody in the wings.
Oh, do we? Oh, yeah. Danielle, you want to join us on the stream? There you go. There we go.
Absolutely.
Hey.
I'm late.
Welcome. No problem.
So where in the world are you right now? You've been bouncing around.
I'm in Denver this week.
You're still in Denver. Okay.
Yes, I was in Arizona last week. I was at home the week before. I was flying back from Istanbul the week before that. I was in Kenya the week before that. So it's been an interesting
Been around.
an
So when are you
interesting
going to
few
hire
weeks.
me and start sending me on these trips?
Right? We'll have to talk.
Right. All right.
And I'm gonna step back
Simon
for a
won't send
minute.
me
I'm still
anywhere.
handling the questions, but I'm gonna step back for a minute just to leave more screen space for y'all. So I'll be
All right.
right back.
Thanks, Randall.
Nobody wants a
All
close
right.
up of me anyway.
Let's see. Let's just go start plowing through these. And just for anyone that's just joining, make sure you get your question in the chat and put a Q in front of your question so we can find it. All right. Let's carry on. Danielle, do you want to introduce yourself? Sorry.
Oh, hi, everybody. Yeah, sure. Okay. I'm trying to be here enough so I hope people will know me, but I am Danielle Cox. I am a Flutter developer. I lead a team of, there's 4 of us right now, and so that'll be cool. And we're working on Flutter Web mainly, which is also kind of exciting. And
Cool. And you're part of the Flutteristas?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, actually, that's the reason why I'm late, is we were having an admin meeting. We call it the administas, the Flutteristas admin group. And so we just had a meeting on that. And so there's going to be exciting news coming up. We are nailing down the details of our next Flutteristas conference. And
nice.
that'll be coming up, I'm guessing, sometime late September, October. And there may even be a physical component to it. We may be partnering up with someone else and actually have some on-site stuff with it. So
nice. Yeah, and the last Flutterista conference was it was a 4-day job, wasn't it?
No, it was 4 sections. It was 1 day, but we want to make sure.
4 sections.
And that's important to us because most conferences are at least local enough that the time that they're doing stuff is local, and we wanted to make it cover enough time frames so that anybody in the world could have a convenient time to either give a talk or actually see part of it. So no, we went I think it was 10-12 hours all in one shot doing it. And so and thank you again for Scott and Simon and Majid and everybody behind the scenes that just helped. That they let us shine and they let us have a great conference, but we couldn't have done it without the help we got from the community. So thank you all.
Hey,
and I will mention that anyone that missed it, you can there's a playlist on this very channel if you want to go watch some of it from the last time. There we go. Okay, let's crack on.
All right. When can we expect full impeller support? This is what caused me to say we're not Googlers.
So just to clarification, we're not Googlers. We don't know, but you can go follow the repo and find out. Let's carry on. Right.
And if we know something, it's under NDA anyway. So
yeah.
Wait, you're under NDA? Oh, that's
right.
I
am. The GDE is under NDA. So if we know
Danielle,
something extra, we can't actually talk about it.
I'm not yet. No.
Oh, okay.
Right. That doesn't mean I'm free to talk, but I'm not a GDE yet either. I would like to be.
What is the best recommended approach to using Logger?
For what? Local logging or like reporting to some,
Well, no, isn't there a package logger?
Yeah, logger.
There is. Yeah.
Sure, but it's got lots of different levels of logging. It's got, you can set up several different loggers, so you can log like your UI separately from your networking, for example, and so you can control how it gets logged differently. So this may be a package that suffers by giving too many options, and so I think it's a good question from that standpoint because you could end up with trying to figure out, well, how do I want to what's the finest versus a fine versus.
Right, this is not logging. Sorry, there's one package called logging, isn't there? Yeah, so this is the official Dart package, which gives you hierarchical sort of logging support, and this can be really complicated to set up. But you can create log basically anywhere in your application. You create any logger instance, and then it uses the root logger. All the messages eventually get the root logger where you can record them. So the idea is that each of your classes can create their own logger. You don't have to go fetch it from somewhere. But this nice thing about this, it can be used in Dart and Flutter code. And then you just do log.find or log.severe or whatever sort of level of log you want with your message and your content. Logger, however, apparently small, easy, extensible logger, prints beautiful logs. I've never really used this. Same sort of concept, and it gives you these lovely sort of colored error messages in the log. Flutter logger extension. That's kind of cool. So there's actually an extension where you can view the logs within your application, I guess. So maybe that's good in terms of, I'm assuming so. If you're creating a Flutter app, you can use Flutter logger extension. Yeah. So that's a nice way. If you've got debug, right? If you need to debug it within your application, like more of a release mode, that could be nice, right?
Yeah, especially when you have a scenarios when you have to like kill off the app and see actually what is happening when you restart it, and you don't want to be bothered with reattaching essentially debugger every time to actually see the logs back. So that would be super useful.
These are very similar.
And I was going to say, we actually use logging, the logging package in my project. So that was the first thing you said.
These look very similar. These are basically the same as the Android. The browser.
Someone copied the log method.
These are the log methods: verbose, debug, info, warning, error, and then WTF. And these are the ones from Android. So someone's it does actually say inspired from Android. Looks at this filtering, pretty printing.
That's okay. I mean, Android ripped off the whole concept of composable UI when they did Jetpack Compose. So
we ripped off Canvas. So we
back and forth. Oh, one of the funniest things was during IO 19, they released Jetpack Compose and announced it to the world. And when you went and looked at the source code, it had Dart doc comments in it. They were written in Dart.
I have to say, no logging package has really done this to my liking, and that is stripping out the debug messages in release builds. So the way they're suggesting in this package is that you add a log filter, and in that you can actually say, should I log it or not? So then you could say in like release builds, don't log it, right? The problem is that if someone was to decompile your app, they would still see all your debug log message text, and just flipping that one boolean from true to false will then enable debug logging in your application for someone maybe to security, infiltrate the application in some fashion. The ideal way is to actually use like a global top level function that's defined differently in debug builds when assertions are enabled, and then you could the compiler will strip out all the parameters that are used because the function does nothing. Like the function performs no action, so it's tree shaken out the parameters. It's a shame that it doesn't do that. That would be my only thing that I could think of when looking at this. But MIT license. Oh, Simon Lena, we know Simon. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So.
And I was gonna say we use logging in my project, and the way it works for that part of it is you set up a listener for the logs.
Yeah.
And so when you do a log, it does a listen. So it's not quite just changing a Boolean for that, but it still means everything would be in there like you just said. But
yeah, it's someone can decompile my app. I mean, like, let's take this question a little bit further. No, let's bring it back up.
Put it back. All right.
We're talking about this now. So we talk about decompile, right? The term is also disassemble is used, right? So in a native Android application, the output is bytecode, right? This is called David bytecode. It's all open source, right? And people have made things that convert David bytecode back to Java bytecode, which can then be converted back to Java source code. This is like the reversing side of it. You're going in reverse in operations. Where'd that question go to? Bring it back up.
Yeah, I was typing something else and didn't realize where my cursor was.
Right. Anyway, so disassembling is the term given for machine code. So when you have the opcodes, the instructions the CPU runs, and you convert that the representation of the assembly from machine code back into assembly of that's still humanly readable to a certain degree, and that's disassembly. But then with decompilation is when you take that and then convert it back to like C code or back to a high level language. Now, strictly speaking, Dart applications, they ship with information about where the functions are in memory in the application's code and what line numbers there are. And this is how you get the debug stack traces at the end of the day. That's how you go, oh, it went from this function to this function to this function from this original source file on this line. Now, you can compile your Dart code with the obfuscation flag. It's actually called obfuscate. And it will strip all that out. And there's another, I can't remember the parameter. And what it does is it saves it's called a mapping, a symbol mapping file of what the input symbols were inside your application. That's like the variable names, the function names, things like that. And then it shows you what it would be if it's obfuscated. It's just random sets of letters and so on, right? And again, the idea behind this is to make it really, really difficult. For example, is as an attacker, if you were to like attempt to decompile and you see these function names, you go, oh, this one says login or encrypt password, right? Then I'm going, okay, I'm going to take a very close look and look at the few lines of assembly code in there and reverse engineer that very slowly, right? But if that function name was not named that, I can't look through 8 megabytes worth of machine code to try and find the 5 lines for the password. It would take me, you could do it, but it would take an awfully long time, right? That's the kind of thing that you're looking at, right? So strictly speaking, any code that you ship to a user is in the client's hands, right? And at that point, they can do whatever they want with your code. You've given it to them, right? Essentially. The difference is they don't have the source code, right? So they can't recompile. It's very difficult. Now, from an Android perspective, it's actually a lot easier, right? Because it's not compiled to machine code. It's compiled to byte code. It's called an intermediary code. So that means that it's a lot easier to decompile and disassemble Android source code. When it comes to Flutter apps, even though they're Android apps, the Flutter logic, all the stuff you write in Dart is compiled to machine code. It's a big black box, but we still leak those line numbers. We still leak those source file names, and we still leak the function names for debugging purposes, for crash logs. So what you do is you obfuscate it, and then when you get the crashes in Firebase Crashalytics, you upload that mapping file. And what it does is when it gets the random set of characters, it goes, oh, that random set of characters actually means sign in with username and password, right? And it puts that there in its place. So it's a way of providing the reverse of the obfuscation just to the places where you need it. That's your error tracking system. So that's
but the
really,
obfuscation is just going to make it harder because you can still try to employ some statistical tools that where is the code which looks like login function, right? Yeah. And then you try to essentially find it in there, right?
Here's the thing. Think about how you built your application. They'll talk to that home users, not to use that, right? But think about how you built your application as a developer. Now think if you've got something to explore and you got some program that would let you explore these functions, but they're in machine code, you don't really get them. And then you go, okay, which bit communicates with the network? Now you can go find that. That's a system call, right? And you work your way back. Eventually, you're going to get to a set of functions that are the API for the application, what it would use to communicate with the server. And from that point, you could look through and determine which one is like login with username and password, right? So at the end of the day is also, I mean, here's another example of why of programming where it goes a bit wrong. That is, as I said about the logging messages, they're strings. These are text that you can read. All of these are shipped in your application in like a big string table. Won't go into the details, but it's kind of like that, right? And in that situation, if I was an attacker, I might just look through the strings and go, oh, there's one that says incorrect username and password, right? Okay, I'm going to look and see where that string is being used within the application. That gives me the place to start looking for where that's being used and how it determines what is incorrect or not. And these are the kind of things that attackers do, right? That to kind of get into the system. So yeah, the things like banking apps and so on, they encrypt, they pack, it's called, but they're executable, the .so file, they encrypt it. So it's really hard to actually statically analyze it because it's not just readable. You have to run it for it to unpack. And even then, when you run it and unpack it, it has methods and systems to detect if someone's monitoring the unpacking. So there's like so many levels deep, but it's always a cat and mouse game. You're never going to get around it. Anyway, that's enough about security.
Well, one follow up on that.
There's
Simon,
some more comments about
What-
it.
what-
coming.
Go.
what do we get for free on that? Does the obfuscation happen for free? What do we get just when we build?
So there's, as I say, your source code is compiled to machine code. That's what you get for free, right? That's essentially a one-way transformation, because you're going from a high-level language to a lower-level language. It's the same. For the people at home, it's the same as like casting a class, right? You can't upclass without knowing what that class is. You can downcast to a simplified version of your class, right? So it's that kind of one-way transition. Think of it like that. However, with enough effort, you can figure out, oh, this says add, and it adds this to this, and it says divide by that, and you can kind of work out what the behavior is and the logic is. But yeah, it takes a long time. There are tools out there that make it easier, but I've not seen any AI magical thing yet, but we never know, right? And that's what you get for free. And then if you enable obfuscation, that's free, right? You don't have to pay for anything. That will do it, and it will spit out the file. Obfuscation can be a sort of double-edged sword. As I said, with the stack traces, you need to make sure in your pipeline, CI/CD pipeline, that you take those outputs for every build and make sure they're stored somewhere. Let's say they're stored with the right version number in a cloud bucket at least, or even better if you use the APIs for Crashalytics or Sentry to upload them, so that when the crashes happen, they get deobfuscated. Otherwise, you're going to be looking at these stack traces of just gobbledygook, and you're like, I don't know, I can't understand this.
Yeah,
Right.
it will be lovely. Function class A, function A of parameters B, B, A, B, B.
Yeah, but they don't have like squiggly bracket underscore.
Yeah.
Just like what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Moving on,
to
because
be
we've
clear-
even got people in the chat saying it's bouncing
Yeah.
off people.
But just to be clear, obfuscation, you get obfuscation with the tools we've got, but you have to opt into it.
Yeah. And there's pages on Dart about that and Flutter, I'm sure, if I remember rightly. Right.
Single letter variables make everything impossible to follow.
Even the source code. All right, next question. While doing I10N in ARB file, I cannot add these brackets together as escape to normal character, not permitted. Use as to escape to normal characters, not to parameter. Use this escape true, still need letter between them, etc. This. I see what you're asking there. I just don't know the answer. So first of all, just for those people at home, I10N is localization. It's a short name for localization. ARB files are language files that have string to language sort of translation tables, if you will. And then you put placeholders in those strings of curly braces as placeholders for parameters to the localizations. The ARB format does allow for escaping, where you can, I thought it was like a backslash or something similar to that. Like you don't put like, I thought it was like a backslash curly brace, backslash close curly brace, and it just works. I may be wrong. You might have to put, again, if they're not raw strings, no, that should work. That should work. And the best thing that I'd say is, why don't you look up the ARB format? The ARB format is JSON, but it is a known format of what the fields are and how it behaves. ARB file format. I literally just Googled it and stuff's coming up. So by lots of companies. So yeah, I'd say go look up that and see what you can find. But generally, oh yeah, it is backslash. Yay! This is the I'm assuming that's right. But yeah, normally backslash is used. If you're in a string that's not a raw string, sometimes you have to do double backslash. That escapes the backslash to then escape the next character. Don't ask me, but if one doesn't work, use two. That's the way you do it, right? Just keep throwing it at the wall until it sticks.
Till it sticks.
All right. I guess next
More
question.
is better.
What is Brad?
Yeah. Is there any possible connection between Brad and Flutter projects?
And I hate to tell you, but I went looking for this on Google and I couldn't find anything. Oh, Bard.
Bard.
No wonder I couldn't find anything.
Wait a minute, is that the Google? That's the Google.
That's
AI
the Google.
thing.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the Google AI.
Which
What about it?
okay,
It's the one that apparently was not. They
Ready.
released it as a
It was-
preview to just give people an idea, and people thought that they were showing a finished product.
it was essentially less ready than ChatGPT is ready. So
Well, yeah, but they advertised it that way when they put it out, but people just kind of like didn't pay attention to that, so they expected it to be like ChatGPT.
From what we'll get off this topic because no one really cares. But from what I heard, apparently an advert went out with incorrect information on it that was output by Bard, and it turns out that Bard obviously spits out incorrect things. So does ChatGPT, by the way. No, it just spits it out with like authority. Yes, the fact is 2 + 2 = 5. You're like, no, right? That kind of thing, right? And apparently that the people that are building the advert for Google, the slides or something, didn't fact check it. So they just put in the slides. It was incorrect information. So which obviously screws stuff up or something like that. Anyway.
But when you're coming to essentially connecting any Google Cloud pieces, there are APIs for it. Some of them are auto-generated. There is a package which actually allows you to do a lot of stuff natively in Dart while talking directly to GCP, and it doesn't go to the platform, so it doesn't go through the usual route. And these packages are auto-generated, and so my strong guess will be, as probably ChatGPT would give you this answer, is that probably this is also covered here. The moment essentially this API will be available here, it will be also auto-generated here. And
one of many APIs supported by Google. Many.
Yeah, so if you're complaining like, why my Flutter Firebase plugin cannot update the remote config or some other stuff, like change some, some administrative parts on the, you can do it through this package. You don't have to go through just normal classic one.
One good thing with all this AI stuff is that it's going to take a lot of pressure off Stack Overflow, because people who have no idea how to code and get a job on Fiverr are like, write my app for me, please, or show me a class with this member, this member, this member, this method, and it can do this. It's like, dude, we know you got the job on Fiverr, but we're not going to do it for you. Go to ChatGPT.
There's an interesting thing that I saw someone doing the other day where they ask it to make some ChatGPT to make some code, and then they're like, no, I wanted to do this, or I wanted to do that, and they just keep adding things, and because it's the conversation nature, it keeps correcting the code and changing it, and then eventually get to the actual answer they wanted, which is kind of an interesting way of coding, because you're coding with prompts and expressions of English to get to your final kind of result. But I'm not sure if it'd actually be quicker or not. I feel like it'd probably be slower.
I'll have to look at it. Copilot?
Yeah. Copilot, GitHub Copilot.
No, I've just seen Remy's comment on it about it that about is it faster than actually finding it yourself? Does it make you really faster? Right, Randall. Oh, you muted.
Muted though.
Randall.
I knew I was going to do that. I've been using Copilot since the first of its initial release, and I am now paying $10 a month for it. It is absolutely worth it because it's spookily. Like if I add a final variable to a class, but I've already built the constructor and toString and the matchers for equals and hash value. If I add it in as a final, it goes down and automatically adds all the right other elements for me, even if they were custom written. Somehow it does it. And yesterday,
is it a bit like what Pantel is built with his data class? If I do this, there's gonna add me this.
It actually does do that kind of thing. So you're right, but it's not just that. It's on a like.
Well,
character by character basis, right? Like it's not like
so just a couple days ago, I'm working with a client that has a huge provider code base, and I'm moving it to Riverpod. And so to convert a select that's inside a widget into the equivalent builder, a consumer builder, you have about 3 or 4 steps to do. Wrap it in consumer, create a final of the variable you're selecting, and all that. Anyway, after I had done it 3 times for this code base, the next time it prompted exactly with what I needed to have, with the right new variable name, the right new sub variable name, because it picked out the sub selector was a different variable name than the parameter name. It was amazing. So yes, it is saving me time. $10 a month, totally worth it. Actually, that's weird because then it means I have less billable time, but that's okay. That's okay. It's more free time.
The thing is, I'd say that makes it IntelliSense on steroids, right? That is the definition of that, I think. However, I will say the problem is don't use it to learn, right? So it's fine. I feel like for someone like Randall who understands this stuff, I don't know. I just feel like it's helpful addition. But if you're just like putting a comment in saying, build me a function that does this and it builds it.
No.
You're not learning anything, right? And
this is a great apprentice. It's not the programmer, it's the apprentice. And like every apprentice, you have to say, no, I didn't want that. I want this instead. And that really helps. It's also, I built my first Mason brick, by the way. I'm really happy about that. I might put a link in a moment after I get my hands down out of my face. But I built my first Mason brick, and I wrote half of the documentation with it. I would just start a comment, and it would go. I was like, yeah, that is what I did. Okay, sure. So I wrote documentation with it, and that again, well worth the $10 a month. It's worth $10 a day sometimes for me. I mean, it's really, really.
So basically, you're at a point there where it is your junior coder, and you're doing code reviews now. Exactly.
It puts me in a designer architect role and final verification role, which is a much nicer role to be in, I think. I mean, if there's a lot of tedious rote code to write code, there's bad pun, in order to get something done, and especially like this conversion from provider to Riverpod, somewhat mechanical. I still wish Remy would have finished his tool, but he said, people use it once and they don't really are excited by it. I go, okay, great. But I have to suffer now. I guess I get more billable hours this way. But
what do you mean use it once? Use it once per app.
Right.
You know how many apps we
deal with? You're on my side. You're on my side. You're not on Remy's side. I'm just saying you're on my side for that. But no. So, but the fact is that I can get that kind of boring stuff done a lot faster just by simply watching Copilot. And yeah, it picks up Java code sometimes because Java and Dart are pretty close. So we'll get like a Java system print line or something. And it's like, what? Where'd you get that? That's not useful. And so, but that's the kind of thing it does for me. And I just wanted to jump into the stream for a second so I could say how much of I'm happy with it. I'm happy with Copilot.
I was going to say, Randall, hang out because I'm still getting over COVID and starting to get a bit tired. So, yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead. I'm going to tap out. You tap in.
All right, I'm in.
Everybody have fun. Hey,
thanks,
I made
Scott.
it an hour. This is my first time back. So
yeah, thanks,
got
Scott.
COVID on January 31st, and still slowly recovering. But
keep feeling better.
Yep.
I said keep feeling better.
Hope so. Hope so. All right. See you next week.
What would it be like if Randall did our live coding and showed off Copilot?
Let's get through some questions. Let's get through.
No. But I'm saying when we get to the live coding portion at the end.
You got to see me type then, which is horrible, and I've got a bad keyboard, so I back up a lot.
Okay. They will erase that from the video. Never mind.
Yeah. My keyboard, when I type certain letters, doubles them up all the time, and I can't afford my new laptop yet, and it knows that, so it's just driving me nuts and makes my texting a lot harder. So, Yeah, please. I
trolling
don't
you.
want to do any live coding right now.
Okay.
All right.
Never mind.
Looking to build a Flutter game project in open source. Would like to choose a state management which could
Oh, look
bring
what
a
he
lot of
mentioned. Look what he
contribution.
mentioned.
No, I'm not going. Provide a Riverpod and some other thing. I prefer Riverpod. Good
Yeah.
decision. Yes.
Yes. Yes. There. That was
No,
easy.
I'm a Riverpod fanboy. So Remy was doing this during COVID, actually. But the reason why I'm actually sticking with it is because it's not opinionated. I can build any architecture I want that I need with it, and I don't say, this has to be blocked, this has to be sent some other way. No. That's why I'm essentially at it.
I keep describing it as Lego blocks. You can build anything you want out of it. It does take some mastery and it takes some artistry, but it is very, very flexible. And of course, the phrase, with great power comes great responsibility. So you do need someone who's really in-depth familiar with Riverpod to architect your code, whether that's you or some hired gun for a little while. You need to have a Riverpod expert kind of design the thing. But once you get the design pattern down, it's boom, 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 boom. It's very easy and it's flexible, and it just does some amazing stuff that really nothing else out there can do. It can emulate block patterns in less code than you write with Felix's package. I've got to say. It's really nice.
Yeah, the other nice thing about it is it's Dart. It's not Flutter, right? So you can use it on Dart server side as well. You can share your server between your server and your client. There's all sorts of things you can do there as well. So.
And the advantage there also is that you can test your backend layers, your API layers, and your repository layers, which are all model code, not any visual code. You can test those layers even as they include Riverpod providers in a Dart-only environment in your tests in your Flutter suite. And that's really nice because you don't have to then create a widget with a field on it just to see what the value of this thing is. You could just simply say, what is the value? And it will tell you. Much nicer way to write tests, much faster too.
Yeah, don't believe this, thought that all service locators are bad. The reason why someone wrote very famous blog post about it, that service locators are bad, is because back then, essentially, you were searching these service locators by strings, which you can do very much, harm to your code very easily. Now you have final fields, you have a code completion, you have a type check with it. So this is no longer valid. This entire nice post, which was written, decades ago, I think, it's no longer valid. So
it's also like there's also, I'd like to dispel, like you write your providers in Riverpod as global variables, but they're not instantiated globally. They're instantiated at the scope level in your hierarchy, right? So although you define them globally, they're actually running within scope. So this means that the problem that you have with global variables does not exist with Riverpod.
And I always argue, my counter argument for that every time somebody brings that up. And since you just brought it up, I'll bring my argument in. Class names are freaking global too.
Yeah.
But you never seem to think, oh, but my class names might collide and people can just type any class name they want. Yes, that's true. That's what globals means. And class names are global.
It's actually, I have to say, is that the term that the whole sort of global's a bad thing comes from C and C++. And the reason it comes from that is because there is a global namespace that is shared across your entire application. It's what happens with Objective-C as well. It's the reason why in Objective-C you have NS before string. It's for next step from the original operating system and so on. Everything in Objective-C, or not in Swift necessarily, but in Objective-C, you would have these prefixing letters to make it unique for the namespace that you're working in, because there's a global namespace. In Dart, there is no global namespace like that. Your namespace is built up by the imports and exports that you do when you include your Dart files together. So it's not like you define one and then you can't use that same class name in another file. You can completely use that. In fact, it can be to your detriment sometimes, but it's why we have aliases on imports to solve that problem. Anyway, so just step back. it's not a problem as it would be have been in the old system, in the older languages, or the different languages. Anyway, right, moving on. Right, we'll talk about this forever.
Yeah, exactly.
When developing a package for web using JavaScript, is there a way to upload and integrate the JavaScript files to Flutter projects that use the package without any modification? Yes. There you go. Did you want to know how? You asked, is there a sorry, I'm being facetious.
Is there a way? Yes.
Yes, there is a way.
There. Yeah.
So
next question.
Yeah, right. So if you go to so first of all, if you go to api.flutter.dev, you'll find. Yeah, I'm going to bring this up on the stream just so it's easier for everyone. So on the left here under web, you'll see Dart.js and Dart.js util. These are two helper libraries that help you interop. And there's a little lovely page here, the JavaScript interoperability page. And this talks about how you interoperate, how you pull in stuff, what the packages are, and how you use them. There's also external package JS as well. So just like a lot of the packages in Dart, you have two named versions. You have the name that's inside your Dart.js, and then here we have package.js. So just to be clear, there's the inbuilt Dart functionality, and then this is the package functionality, and this is where you'll find a lot of the additions. And there's lots and lots of guides and information. But here you can see, here's a good example of how you might use it. You use this keyword called external. This has been in Dart since day one. And this is literally how Dart in day one, how Dart would communicate with JavaScript since day one. And here, external, you put it before your function, and because it's in a library with this JS prefix as well, it essentially makes a global import, and in this case, it's actually named it here, JavaScript JSON.stringify. And here's a good example of the namespace idea. Google Maps in your library, and then when you go to create a getter for map, it's actually going to go to google.maps.map. In this case, it's basically joining this to this, right? And the same goes here. When you construct one, it's going to call the constructor for new Google Maps.map with location when you call this function here for the constructor because of this namespace. So basically what you do is you declare your interface like this as external, and then you can just call your JavaScript directly from Flutter Web like that. Yeah, that's about as simple as it gets. There are lots of other things, like when you're calling functions back and forth, especially with upcoming WASM stuff. Is probably going to be more apparent. It's the same, works exactly similarly the same way, but allow interrupt and allow interrupt capture this. This again explains it here. Returns a wrapper around the function that you pass in, so that can be called from JavaScript. So basically, if you want to hand a Dart function to JavaScript to run later as a callback, you have to wrap your function and allow interrupt, and it magically just works, right? And then they'll also, if you want to capture this is the class, the sort of the class then you run this function instead. I won't go into it. There's lots of documentation online, but yeah, it's the Dart.js and Dart.js util provide. I've lost it now, somewhere over here. Well, no, there is. Provide that as sort of additional functionality so you can call constructors and things from Dart. But yeah, you get the idea. There was a facade generator. I think it's deprecated now. Let me see if I can find it. Dart.js facades generator. I think that's what it was called. Yeah, found it. It's in the Dart archives. It works for me every single time I used it. I'll post a link here in the chat and I'll just bring it up quickly. Apparently, it was archived in 2022. It is not maintained anymore, apparently. But what's really nice about this library, I ran it, and what it does is it reads in TypeScript definition files and outputs Dart files that define the same thing in JavaScript. Really, really nice, really, really handy. I'd love it if they were to maintain this again and take this internal, because when you're trying to deal with web, Flutter Web, and this exact same problem of trying to integrate with an external JS library, like trying to make a plugin / package, not to have to manually go through every single class, every single name, and have to type it all back out in Dart makes a big difference to use like a tool like that. But yeah, there you go. That's the answer to that.
We're getting close to where we've got to cut off questions because we've already got a half hour of questions still in the queue, and we've got 40 minutes until the top of the hour. So I think probably I'll give you 5 more minutes, and then we'll cut off. So get your questions in now if you're on the stream.
You've had your warning. I'm kind of curious. We're just about Flutter Web. Are you using any of those JS packages? No, you haven't need to. I can't hear you. Are you muted?
I was muted because I had to cough. Sorry about that. I forgot to turn it back on. I figured if it's good enough for Randall, it's good enough for me to be muted. I really haven't used anything like that. The only things I've had to do, even close to that, really, is a couple places where I've done some iframes, and I've been able to do that just with the normal stuff there. I haven't had to do any interop to get the information back or anything.
The nice thing about the Dart HTML package is the fact that they've actually done the generation of interop with the DOM tree and everything else. So you can just go iframe dot in a source code dot get body tag, and it just works, right? Like it's just JavaScript, which means that anything you write, any little quick lines of JavaScript that you see written on the internet, you can literally just pretty much type in Dart and have the same thing. I really do like the way that their the event listening system on DOM is streams on Dart. It makes so much more sense in that world. There's some definitely cool things you can do just with the inbuilt packages without having to use external.
Yeah, so I haven't had to reach out past that at all.
There always might be a time, and now you know how.
Exactly.
All right, next one, Eduardo. How do you architect your mobile apps? Is it based on your state management package, clean architecture? Any tips or books I can learn more about it?
It seems like a question of coming from Android engineer. It's architecture. It's because historically for Java and Kotlin, you need to architect your apps pretty well if you want to go, beyond 6 months of development. But Flutter is elastic enough to actually, you don't have to go that far. So I would say one thing, you have 2 options. One, you're going to go, I'm going to learn some architecture, let's say block. I'm going to put block, I'm going to put some provider, whatever, river pod, I'm going to build something, okay, this works. Or you can start low. You can start nothing. I have just stateful widgets and I'm inheriting widgets. And as I find, okay, this is not good. I have problems with sending information there or there. So what can I do with it? And you're essentially going up with it. But always tries to, with this approach, you keep it simple, stupid, and then upgrade your solution. And I think the first of the talks that Philip did when explaining provider, I believe, it was like essentially building the same app all over with it's just, okay, this is just stateful widget. Now I do this. This is our package, and it's crap. So we're going to use the Remy's package. And he shows Remy's provider package, right? So you can do essentially the same thing. And then you'll find a realization that, oh, actually, I don't need that. Because the worst thing you can do, and this is my assumption, I might be wrong, that you will try to bring your knowledge from another platform is I need these things. I need my use cases. I can't live without my use cases from Android, right? I can live without my use cases, right now after essentially developing so much.
I totally expect that, right? Like, as a developer, if you're going to come from C# or Java, you come to Dart and you haven't done Dart before, you're going to program it like it's C# or Dart until you learn there's better ways in Dart of doing these things or better approaches to doing things. Just to get back to the question about how do you architect your apps, there is the model that I predominantly use in most of the apps I build is the repository pattern, if you want to call it anything, which is this notion of you have your UI, then you have like your block or business logic layer, then you have repositories, which is like a caching layer, and then below that you have a service layer, and that is like your external anything external to your application that you're using, any service, anything is in the service layer. You have to get through all those layers. Only each layer can communicate with itself. So you have to go through these layers. And this kind of like gives you like this layer cake or some sort of layering that means that you're isolating your UI from talking straight to a service, right? It has to go through these other layers, which means you now have to wrap it, give it sort of error checking and other things. So you kind of get this nice layering. However, there's no like go-to way of doing anything, right? Like, as I said, like it depends on what you're building to how you might architect it. You said, is it based on your state management package? And I'd say not particularly. There's always going to be a certain amount of what you're doing that is based on that. And as I said, if you're using Riverpod, that's even more so because you can just do pure Dart. So you can actually do your entire backend of your app, not involving any UI, with Riverpod. And then you can also use Riverpod to do your state management of your front end. So you can get the best of both worlds.
The thing about Riverpod though is that whatever architecture you come up with, you can probably implement it with Riverpod with all the right bells and whistles that you need for that. Whereas with say, if you decide on Block, you're sort of forced into some of the architecture that Block requires to make sense.
Yeah, I do want to make another remark on this because I've seen this done as well. Is people, they choose a state management and they say that is the way I do all state. This is incorrect, right? Yeah, that's easy. Even Randall is saying no, don't do this. It's the same thing. It's like you have maybe like a list of data, or you have a list and you have some data and you have to get something for the tree. People go, oh, I need a Riverpod instance to access that data. No, you could just go up the tree and get that data. Like anything that you're doing within your UI is self-contained. You can make those choices to say, okay, this is a private widget. It can only be created by this other widget. Therefore, it can have this notion of access, and you just go get it directly. Like you can literally have your named widgets go reference each other. It's not even a problem.
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with route parameters to create a daughter widget. I'm perfectly fine with obviously intrastate state is all set state, or if you really want to hooks is good too for that sort of stuff. So the Riverpod doesn't come into play on any of those, not for daughter widgets or within a state kind of state. You don't want Riverpod involved.
Basically, anything involving your UI state is that it's UI state. You state objects, you use stateful widgets, you do all that. If, however, it is something that is more like modeled state, your domain logic to do your domain layer, that is what's specific to your use case of your application, then that is where your state management should come in.
Yeah.
And it's a minor point, but based on the questions asked, is there? I can't think of any way I would want to architect my mobile app any different than any other app I'm doing with Flutter. So
yeah,
just kind of want to make that point that's maybe going along with Randall's thinking it's coming from an Android, or Swav's thinking it's coming from an Android programmer. It's.
So I'm gonna give you because there's a question for a tip. Yeah, so I'm gonna give you a tip I got from my favorite, software architect I ever met. And Ricardo said to me, Swav, you know what is the best system? When you see the system, it has an input and an output. That's it.
Yeah.
So the least connections you have between the system, it allows you to architect better this thing. If you have something which goes to many places, the moment you change it, all these things are affected.
Spaghetti code.
Your architecture you create a God object, you start to actually having problem that this change actually falls down. All the tests are failing on all these other
single responsibility principle, right?
And this is what clean architecture should give you, that you don't have to do it. Right? This is what clean architecture should give you, that you don't do it. But don't overdo it. Because on the other hand, you have to essentially measure how complex is your app. You can have an app which will have a same model traveling from it comes out of DO and rough through all the layers up to your view, and it'll be all fine. But for other app, which will be more complex, there will be very dangerous thing to do, because for whatever reason you have to modify this thing, you modify everything on the way. Right? So here is essentially your chicken and egg. Now, should I go for this, upper level, or lower level? And this is what you will be learning. But it's just up to you whether you're gonna choose from easier and make it up, or you're gonna go harder and just simplify it somehow.
It does take a lot of discipline and experience and artistry to understand where you start inserting indirections to insulate one side from the other. And in small apps, it doesn't matter. It can all be one glob, but you have to learn where those slices go in. Typically, they're at testing boundaries where you'd want to test this section separately from that section. So you start figuring out what those layers are doing. What's one good thing about RiverPod is that those can be providers that basically provide that insulation. And so you can quickly swap those out in testing using the override mechanism. So really nice for that. And
just before, we're going to get up this question, but just before I do, I will mention that don't be scared to refactor. Architect it however you want. Architect it really, really badly, but get something down. Write some code.
Yeah.
That's the hardest Android. Flutter is not Android. Don't worry.
The hardest thing you can do is just start, right? Once you start and you start getting stuff down, you can start building upon your initial concepts and ideas. And yes, you might get some screwy code at the end of it. And then what you go look at it and go, how can I make that better? And then re-architect it into a formal architecture that makes sense for your application. But refactor. Don't be scared to delete whole swaths of the code and redo it. You'll learn more that way, trust me.
Yeah, on the side, the way I'm learning architecture and I'm training my architecture is by building the same app all over again.
Yeah.
So because you figure out your domain, you know what you want to get, and you're building this, and okay, it's kind of dodgy here. Okay, let's try it again. And the faster you're iterating through it, the better. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right, let's move on. Next question. If you're taking interview a Flutter developer, what question will you ask? Please tell one question each. What was the question you would ask?
My go-to random question I've been asking people just is, what is your favorite widget and why?
That's
and,
nice.
Wow.
And I could get a fair amount out of it. As far as I know, nobody else is actually asking that. So
it's really nice if they give you an obscure widget and you're like, ooh.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Is that a widget? I didn't know that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So during interviews, I try to determine two things. It's what people's motivation. That's the one thing I want to figure out. But the second one isn't how quickly they learn. But when it comes actually, because very often when someone is interviewing, they want to figure out who are the Flutter engineers who actually use Flutter and there, or someone who just did a couple of demos, built some quick code labs, and they don't know. And then you go for this like a kind of simple questions like, should you modify your state and then call empty set state? Or another question is, can you tell me the difference between constant final? And then you can actually tell, okay, how deeply they went through, and these are the questions that I'm going to figure out if someone really tried it slightly deeper level to get it. But normally I'm not going for this because I'm usually looking for people who will be essentially how quickly they're going to pick up. Because to be honest, whatever you know today, in 6 months, it'll be a completely different story, right? In 6 months, we will have a meta-programming with a completely different rendering engine and a couple other things. And my current knowledge will be...
It's a new game. It's a new game coming up. My favorite question, because it involves thinking a little bit, is there an advantage to making a widget const? And if so, what is it? Because that says, do they know they can make a widget const? Because a lot of people don't. And also understanding enough about the rendering engine to figure out, not the rendering engine, but the building engine, to understand why that's important. So, yeah.
I'm just trying to think of, I'm literally going through some questions I've asked in the past right now. To be honest, I don't really have a favorite. I
asked ChatGPT once for a list of 10 questions. It actually came up with some pretty good ones that took some work to answer.
A good one I might ask is when should you use a key on a widget? For what reason?
When Emily tells you to. When Emily tells you to.
No, I think there's situations like if they can talk about the sibling problem that you can kind of get with refresh
Yeah.
your state, I think that's a good
Yep.
answer.
Definitely.
But I mean, most of this is just to kind of gauge someone's sort of, again, as we're saying, like level of knowledge. They might have spent like a whole week cramming for that, but they've got the knowledge there. So,
I want to say that as an expert, I'm still getting interviewed for Flutter projects. For some reason, they think they have to interview me, but okay. So they'll ask questions, and I then have to say, do you want the popular answer or do you want the actual answer? And it freaks them out because sometimes the popular answer is not actually accurate.
Yeah.
Those are fun.
I mean, another one was what was that other classical one? The one where it's like, why should you not, or when should you, or why should, I don't know, you can answer it a bunch of different ways, but when should you be using a function to return widgets versus the build method, right?
Yeah.
So there's that kind of like, understanding that and that principle behind that is another good one to understand as well.
Right.
The answer is always build a widget.
Yep.
Anyway, all right, moving on. Go on.
Except when it isn't. Except when it isn't.
Except when it isn't. Yeah.
If you want access to the scoped variables, you got to have it be a method.
Yeah, but what I mean is, it's still that's been.
Or you can pass it as parameters, right? That's the right way to do is pass it as parameters.
Right,
but if you're in a hurry, you just want anyway. Okay. Go.
RealmDB is a mobile database. Yes.
So just want to read the question. Read the question, Swav. Go on.
Okay. What is RealmDB and how is it different from Hive, ESAR, SQLite? So RealmDB is a mobile one. Initially, it was for iOS and Android. It was allowing you to, without, I believe, code generation, essentially have some kind of data access objects to write and get stuff back from it. And it was back then. And then came Flutter. And Flutter initially had wrappers, but I know that there was work on Nabil Hachicha was working on at Realm, a friend of mine, and now Mongo, because Mongo now owns it, I believe. So these guys essentially written, at least, I don't know how far they got with it, but they written the RealmDB, which can go through FFI, so directly from Flutter into the database.
It's released.
Yeah,
it's released. Yeah,
yeah. So that's actually what you get there. Now Hive, as I understand, is 100% written in Dart inside out.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. So RealmDB is a C++ or whatever C, essentially DB. Somewhere, but you're talking directly through FFI from Flutter to it. That's perfect. Now Hive is Dart, and writing into some storage.
It also means that you don't get tree shaking, right? We're using Realm because you're using the FFI boundary, so you have to include the entirety of Realm's code. You may not be using some of the functionality from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that's a bad thing. Like I'm just giving you, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. I will mention that RealmDB. The reason why it actually existed, from what I remember back in the early Android days when it first came out, was that we had SQLite, which is a relational database, which you use query language to deal with it. When a lot of the time in an application, you want an object store, you want something you just dump objects in and retrieve them by their IDs or some path or something, right? It's more about storage than actually sort of searching in a relational sort of way that you would get in larger database sets. Mm-hmm. So that's where RealmDB came out from. There was a big hoo-ha. I remember the very original days because there's tooling around SQLite. You could pull SQLite database off your device. There's all this kind of like tooling around actually opening up a SQLite database and manipulating in fashions. Where Realm was very much like, we use our way of doing things, and it isn't like open at the very beginning. I think it's a lot has changed now. I'm not going to go. I don't know what it's like now, but I know a lot has changed. Hive is that same thing. Hive is open source, all completely written in Dart. ISAR is spelt wrong here. It's one S. It's ISAR. I just bring this up on stream since we're talking. It's this one, this package here. Mm-hmm. And this is we've actually there's actually a video we did with the author on this very channel. So if you go search ISO in this very channel afterwards, you'll find our video where we talk all about databases, and this is really great. This is kind of a mix between the two. It uses a native library under the hood to do the raw sort of low-level database stuff. There's I'm trying to remember what it's called now. It escapes me the name of it. LMDB is the format supported underneath. Anyway, the nice thing about LMDB was it was used along for quite some time. It's very well known, it's very well structured, and it's very reliable. And that's what you want from a database, including its complete ACID semantics. That's atomicity, concurrency, something I forget. But the point here is that you have reliancy with your database, right? And you get that with Realm probably as well, and SQLite and so on. But that's the definition of having a good database, when you have those things. And then ISAR being a more recent one, it has like full text search, has a bunch of other features that kind of promote it forward. But there's no reason. Again, the same problem is ISAR has great tooling, but you have to use that tooling, right? Or you have to make your own to do certain things. Maybe there's more advanced things that you want to do. And that's the difference between using something like SQLite, which is not just built for Dart, but built for multiple platforms. So you said, how is different? That's how it's different. You just choose whatever one you think is great for your project. I like ISAR personally right now is my favorite out of all of those four that you specified there, mainly because it also supports desktop and all the other environments that Dart supports as well. So, and they actually have full web support as well. So there you go.
Yeah, and now they grant by in the room SQLite, which is since the beginning of Android, I believe. So I don't know how the work with SQLite works right now. But back in the day, it was
it's the beginning of time, not just the beginning of Android, beginning of time.
Yeah. So you write your queries, you get the cursor with a response, you have to parse it, and up to you is if you're gonna use some other library to make some model objects on top of it, auto-generated, parsed or whatever.
It also has, because it's light. It's the key thing about this. It's light. It has some things where it will store things as, like, depending on how you compile it, say as a double. Every number is stored as a double, right? Like it's like it will just phrase things. It will treat things a certain way because it's easier from a light perspective. It doesn't mean it's the most efficient or effective, right? You wouldn't want what SQLite does in a very large database, right? It's good for mobile use.
It does have all the technology of standard SQL. It actually follows the SQL official standard, and it has transactions, and it has stored procedures, and it has stored procedures in foreign languages, which is really all cool stuff. But its data type is very plain, and you're stuck with that. It'll take the notation in, but it'll ignore it. Yeah, everything's a text. Everything's a text, basically. Yeah.
There is also, I do like the fact that SQLite allows extensions. So I've actually built a few SQLite extensions, which means that you can add like Cipher and encrypt all your data coming in and out of your database by just adding an extension. It adds a wrapper function, you select and you're done. That kind of stuff is like really powerful.
Your app has to do something very specific that you will need SQLite with its all capabilities, because if you are just simply storing some data against the key, you have other options, much easier options around.
Right.
ISAR as well. I was going to mention this. We spoke. I'm going to speak more about it, but we did speak more in the other video, so go check it out. But it does have relational access to database and objects, and expansion and extraction of more objects from the database when required on request. So it's some really nice advanced features that you probably want. Right, moving on. Right, let's crack on, because we're not going to get further questions otherwise. Did we call the question stop? We did, didn't we?
The questions are gone.
Just to be quiet, no more questions, right?
No more questions, Your Honor. No more questions.
Go router. Question. Go router. On web, context.pop is not working if I reload the page. I think this is due to the page history stack getting deleted on page reload. What is the solution? Don't reload.
Yeah. So basically, this is not a Go router question. This is a web question. All total.
So go on. I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that if it was really, first off, if depending on how your routes are and stuff like that, you could rebuild it, but you wouldn't have your state anymore. So you actually get the proper maybe tree in place for that. I mean, there's a way to kind of tell that it's about to go away. So if it's super important, you had this, and you had to handle this as an option, I guess you could maybe somehow serialize that and bring it back in. But
I was going to say, yeah, if you leave the page, I'm not actually sure. Do you actually get time for some JavaScript to run? You used to have the on blur. I'm to go back to the 90s now. You used to have on blur on the body tag, and that would run some JavaScript when your page went out of focus or when you left the page, the window got closed. I'm not sure if that's still a thing or not. But if you can run some code when shutting down, I'm assuming on dispose of your widgets, it gets shut down nicely. Then yeah, you could save your stack, your state of what screens you're on, and then store it to persistent storage, like local storage. There's a shared preference, use the shared preferences library, whatever, and then you can restore it when it comes back. But to be honest, that's only if you can do that. And to be honest, if someone hard reloads a page, that's the whole purpose, to get rid of the state. So there should be no getting around this. You're really going against the user's wishes. If they refresh, they're refreshing for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before and load. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could know, and you could do something about it if it's super important. But I would use that really to handle cleaning up something. Like if you needed to send something that said I'm done, more so than I would for trying to save your state, your entire route state that's going on. So yeah, but that really is a web question, because any routing solution you've got would have that same problem.
Yeah. And again, the key here is you should probably, like when you're doing a reload, the user is trying to forcefully reload the page. So you probably don't want to do that. Right. That's the key thing. If you're, I tell you, sorry, just going back to that, there might be more of a navigator problem that when they refresh, they're refreshing the path, which is to like something that can be popped. That is up to you as a developer, so that when you look at the page being loaded, is it one that is like a temporarily kind of navigated pop thing? Then navigate them to the previous page, and you can do that in a redirect function inside GoRouter. So go look up a redirect in GoRouter, and then you can make that logical behavior of, oh, there's nothing in the stack, don't let them go to that page, take them to the home screen, that kind of thing, and it'll just change the URL to the home screen, and they'll get loaded up.
Yeah, so. But I mean, I was gonna say like on my Android phone, if I pull up, like for example, it's not web, but like if I pull up Facebook on that, and it's it came in on a notification, and if I go hit the Android back button, it actually takes me out of the app. It doesn't take me where it should go. So
I think the example here is really about like how you do navigation within your application. So for example, let's say you're on Twitter and you press new tweet, and it pops up with a dialogue to enter a new tweet. Now you can change the URL to being like twitter.com/new tweet. Now, if the person refreshes the page, they're going to be loaded with the new tweet dialogue, but can they go back to where they were before they press the new tweet button? No, they can't. Right? That's the problem you're in. The point is that what you're loading should not change the URL, because it is a temporary state in that situation. Right? Or if it does, then you need to be able to handle the fact that if you start up with that URL, to redirect them to the appropriate place where they can start from.
Yeah. But if you duplicate a GoRouter, you can set up a backstack, can't you?
You can, yeah. You can. Same as all the routers let you do that kind of thing.
Yeah. So again, if it's just the routing part, that can be set up to make it work right. But if you want the state of what existed before, that's a little bit different.
Yeah. And again, like as I said, like you probably on reload, the user doesn't want to. They're trying to restart it. They're trying to reload the page on purpose, right? Anyway, Billy says, "Is there a way there used to be a compiled list of questions asked in the comment sections per episode. Really handy searching for questions that were already asked. Any chance that could be done going forward?" We do have a lovely guy in the community who does give us those things, and when he can, he will be posting to us. We're actually going to even get him on board. I forget his name. I'm sorry. He's probably in the chat right now going like, it's gone. The name's gone. Anyway, we'll see if we can get him access so that he can like update the segments and stuff directly. Yeah. Anyway,
that'd be nice.
But yes, hopefully yes is the answer to that one. What features you wished to Flutter teams to introduce in Flutter future Flutter releases?
More features.
More features.
No, not specific. No, actually,
Better features.
you know, I think that one of the things which is main reason for Flutter success is actually simplicity, how quickly you can pick it up. So actually making it more essentially, easy to pick it up. That's
Right.
the thing. So this is what I would like to say. No more complex things, no more complex templates. I have to put more parameters in to actually have something started, because then I'm starting to remember my horrible days with Android and shaky IDEs which try to essentially compile something. But here is like make it simple. That would be a good thing. That everything which simplifies essentially the code base. So there would be, I don't know if meta programming will gonna simplify it.
Maybe.
I know that definitely some of the code that I'm writing will be easier with things like buttons.
Well, this is the thing that I was literally, my answer to this was going to be not a Flutter specific, but Dart. The best things that we've had for Flutter have come from Dart. And what I mean, well, not the best things, but what I mean is one of the best things I can remember is be able to do for and if statements now in list constructors, right?
Right.
Like before we had that, you have no idea the pain we had to go through of like add this thing to a list, add this thing, add all these things to a list. And it was like, yeah, it's so much more semantically understood now when you see that. And with patterns and records, it's going to revolutionize the way we can do Dart code, and therefore Flutter apps built on top of that. And I think that that's the kind of thing that I like to see. Flutter itself, I'd also say that Impeller is one thing I can't wait for. There's certain things. So to be clear, the Flutter team made a very important decision at the beginning, and that was, we're not going to include the entire rendering API from Skia, which is the underlying system for doing the rendering. Because if they're to do that, then suddenly they have to support that entire API surface on all the platforms, right? And it becomes very difficult. And it's the reason why things like shaders only just come in, because offering shader support on all the platforms is a hard proposition, right? And the same thing goes with some others. But there are certain things that I feel like, when you're trying to do those low-level rendering things, like I've been trying to do some 3D recently and some other things, having access to that lower level is really important. But there's no escape button. There's no escape hatch that says, give me access to everything, right? It's there, but give me access to everything. And there's no button for that, right? And I can see why they don't want to do that, and I perfectly understand it. But yeah, I feel like maybe there's a few functions, a few more sort of helpful drawing functions that we could have that would make our lives a bit better. And I'm hoping that with Impeller being a system of drawing Flutter apps that is unique to Flutter, that's meant for Flutter, means that we can actually get those optimizations and get more functions and features from drawing and have it multi-platform.
I have a simple one to explain. I was going to say.
Go ahead.
Randall, you want to go first, or me go first?
No, go.
Okay, mine's actually simple to explain. May not be as simple to do. But one thing that annoys me is they added the selectable text. So you can make your app where it's selectable, but it doesn't select all the text. So, like for example, if you're a rich text, it's not selectable. If you have a text in a button, it actually makes that selectable, so you get the wrong cursor versus the tap cursor. And there's ways around a lot of these things, but I would love to have that solution actually made simpler. To make it to where we could turn it on, because that was the promise, is you could turn it on and then your entire app would be would be selectable and copyable.
It would be nice to just I feel like we shouldn't be having to put selectable region in our apps on when compiled for web. I feel like it should be the inverse. It should all be selectable because that's how the web is, right? Okay. And then conversely, if I don't want something selectable, I can do that. So a flag like a selectable flag on Material app or somewhere on the top level, which kind of does that for you, makes sense. But when it comes to that selectable stuff, it's always been a problem, and it's because it renders all the pixels. I completely get the problem, but yeah, it's definitely something we should.
Like I said, easy to explain.
TLC. Yeah, a bit more TLC.
Maybe not. Yeah. So, sorry to jump on you, Randall. It's your turn.
Oh, I was just going to say that I on the other side of this, I'm really appreciating the diligence that the teams put in on the Dart and Flutter side to only step forward in ways that are provable and built out properly and enable a whole new space of solutions. And that, because the tendency would be just to throw everything in that everybody wants, and then you end this mishmash and you're committed to it for future versions after that. So one of the reasons macros are taking a long time is because they really want to get it right, because once they commit to it, they're supporting that. They're going to have that as a backward compatible step forever. So they want to get it right the first time out.
And on that note, I'm going to just tell people about this page that you may not have heard of, Flutter Design Documents. It's part of the repo. I'm posting the link right now in the chat. Basically, this is the design documents that they're working on right now. These are all possible future features. There's no guarantees here. This is all in the design phase of things that they're working towards designing, structuring, like autocomplete, auto-submit, blank canvas, buffer queue, whatever all these things are, right? The point here is these are all the things that they're the design documents. And guess what? You get to click on one of these, like a desktop resize, and then it loads up. And then guess what? You get to like read it and highlight and leave comments for the team and do that for all these things. So, they want your input. That's why it's there. It's open source. And if you've got some valid input to give back on a key feature that you're interested in that they're working on, that's a great place to put it.
And a lot of those have issues. I think you just said that, but a lot of those have issues, and the issues, they're looking at thumbs up. They're looking at comments. They're looking at possible alternatives. This really is a community-driven project. Yes, the people, in Mountain View get to say left or right, but we can all go left, go left, go left, and it really works. So it helps.
All right, next question. What can Flutter Web retrieve from a mobile device? I'm trying to get to anonymously ID each unique user. Currently, I make use of UID, which changes from one browser session to another. The answer is, even on mobile apps, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Because uniquely identifying a user is considered a very privacy-orientated problem. And getting for example, on a mobile app, you might be able to get like the MAC address from the network card, which is normally hard-coded. That is firmware fixed to their machine. Getting the user's, CPU ID, or getting some other sort of fixed ID that's associated to that device or to that user. And that's considered private information. And now you cannot do that on Android and Apple, even more sort of privacy orientated at the moment around these things. When it comes to browsers, what I suggest you do, and again, it's once per browser session, you can actually store in local storage a UID. So generate yourself a UUID, a unique ID. If it's not in local storage, you generate one and put it in local storage. That means that the user start a new session with your site, and it's always there. Unless they clear their local storage, it's going to be there.
Right.
And yes, if they reinstall their browser, they're going to get a new one. Or if they clear their history, or they're doing it incognito, they're doing a new one. But it's not the same as a browser session, right? So it's going to be a bit more long-lived than that. But again, there's no way of uniquely identifying a user.
And you can do the same thing with mobile too. So typically what you can do is just print. You can imprint it with a unique ID and have that in your database. And that's the way to deal with the stuff. The advantage of that number is that, and here's the other side, which Simon hasn't mentioned yet, but the other side of this is I want to upgrade my phone. I need to be able to have this phone be treated by everybody the same way that phone was. And if there's any hardware unique items there, I can't do that. And of course, the manufacturers want you to be able to do that because they want churn. They want you to buy this year's model. And of course, they're going to start cracking down on anybody trying to access anything that distinguishes last year's model from this year's model in their data. So that's why we're seeing more pushback from that and privacy. I agree with privacy too. So, yeah.
Also, I just want to say that if it's a browser on your mobile device, that's if you ran a different browser, that would be a different set of, it would show up unique on that. And I don't think I would use it just for this, but doesn't Firebase handle that also?
Well, Firebase does the same thing. So Firebase
Yeah.
stores something in local storage persisted so that it can, so when you restart, you're still logged in.
Right.
Same as a cookie. Essentially, it's the same as a
Yeah.
cookie, right? It's essentially local storage, cookie, same difference. But the again, like what Randall said, you can do this. You do this on mobile apps as well. You generate your unique ID for your user when they first load up your application. You store it, and should I say it's for your a key is it's not a user ID, it's an installation ID. It uniquely identifies the installation of the application. If they clear their day or reinstall the app, you're going to get a new ID. If the user logs out and a new user logs in on the same application, it's the same ID, right? So it uniquely identifies that's installation of the user's application on a mobile app specifically. Obviously, a little bit different on web, but it's the same sort of thing, longer term than a session.
And by the way, if you didn't want that, you could always remove what you stored. If you wanted to, depending on what you want to do, if you didn't want it to be the same, if they log out, you could always clear that if you wanted to also.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The point that Randall wanted to sort of clarify what Randall said there was that if you upgrade your device, what's really nice about having that unique ID is it ships as part of your app's data, so that when they update, the unique information for the application is sent across to the new device, and therefore it keeps the same installation ID, right? So that's also another handy thing. Obviously a bit different on mobile, but yeah, along the same lines. Hopefully that helps.
I've had too many times when I've upgraded hardware and had to re-log into a bunch of services because they didn't do that. That was annoying.
So many. That used to be like, I'm not joking. Swav, do you remember when Android brought in the backup feature, the data backup feature?
Oh, I don't remember. Yeah, but it was
like 2. Yeah. Was it 3? I can't remember. 2.5. I can't remember. It wasn't early days, but there was days when you would literally get a new device, and that's it. Every app you'd have to log back into every single time. It was a nightmare. And then they added the backup feature to Android, which meant that certain data get backed up to Play Store for the application.
But then now it's all cloud, essentially copying to the new device, right?
But still, it's like even if you copy the new device, you want to make sure that you stay logged in. And there's depending on how the person makes the app, it may not happen. All right, anyway, moving on.
Somewhere. Yeah.
Gabriel says, "Is it better to do multiple painting operations on simple paths, or just one, but for a complex path?" Good question. And I can give you a very good answer for this one, and the answer is both.
I was gonna say yes.
So I'll give an example. If you've got simple paths and they're moving on the screen, right? When they go off screen, that's going to be completely culled off, and it's not going to be tessellated. So I'll give you a little clue. If let's say you have you're drawing a circle on the screen, right? What's going to happen is your GPU cannot draw circles. It has no notion of what a circle is. You have shaders and stuff. I'm going to, but basically, when it comes to paths, what happens is it then converts that circle into lots and lots of triangles, right? Big triangles for the big mass in the center, very small triangles for the edges to get those nice round curves, right? Now, if it's really, really complicated, it takes a lot longer to tessellate and to work out that math out. But then again, he only has to do it once. But if you paint it off screen, it's still painting those portions necessarily off screen, right? Because you're painting a path as a whole piece. So, but every time you do a draw of a path, you have a certain amount of overhead in processing and tessellating that path. So it really, the key here is that what you're asking for is like this scale. And the scale really depends on how you're using the paths. So I would honestly, the best way you're asking about this is about, if it's, you said better, I'm assuming you mean more performant. Test it. Test your performance. Do it one way, is measure the performance. Do it another way in another branch, test the performance. Whichever one works better in your case, it's more performant. There you go. Use that.
And I would also say better. Another way of better would be could be on maintainability. And so I think it would depend on how complex the complex one was. I'm thinking about how like the Greeks back in the day had figured out how to calculate the orbit of a planet, thinking it was, circling the Earth, and it's very, very complicated. Whereas if you just make it circle the sun, it's very easy. So, I would just say that if your simple paths are really very simple, but the complex ones having to really jump through a lot of hoops and doing a lot of things so the code's not readable, things like that, I would at least, unless you had a performance problem, I would go with the simple paths at that point.
Don't pre-optimize. That is the key.
Yeah.
Don't
That
pre-optimize.
reminds me, small story, short story. And actually, Daniel, you said you had to get out of here?
Yeah. I'm actually going to go drop off. I'm in Denver for a reason, so I need to get back to that. But thank you all for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
And I hope to see you
Thanks.
next week. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll
Thanks.
be here.
Bye.
So now to follow up on that, I remember early in the early days when my friend Wim Leeler, who got me into the Flutter and the Flutter program, and he was a Flutter developer relations guy, told me that the Flutter developers analyzed the video for scrolling and bounce back in iOS and Android to be able to come up with an equation that simulated it as accurately as possible. And then they went across the hallway and talked to the Android guys and said, we've come up with this formula. And the Android guys said, that's a lot simpler than what we're doing under the hood. But it's right. It's better.
Yeah.
I don't know if it got adopted, but I thought that was funny that if you take the resulting motion and analyze it, it's just a simple cubic or something. So it's pretty funny.
All right, next question. We're finally getting through. We're on final last few here. So let's see. Techist says, how to use Firebase App Check with Play Integrity on Android. Any plugin available?
Haven't used App Check.
I haven't used it. I know what you're talking about, but honestly, I've not used it. And if there's not like you can't, I mean, honestly, I would just be searching App Check in pub.dev and seeing, oh, there's a package called Firebase App Check by Google. There you go. There's your answer. There you go. Look, I literally just typed it in. Firebase App Check. Firebase.google.com.
Yeah.
There's your package. Add that and you're done. And read the documentation, of course, and work out how it works. I'm guessing. I have no idea. I'm guessing you get a. Yeah, let's have a look. Get token, activate. There you go. Set token, refresh. Fun stuff. AppCheck is a premature service. Okay.
I don't know what that means, but it is.
Apparently, someone doesn't like it. I obviously have never used it. Never used it, so I don't know. All right, next question.
Yes.
Hey, John. Just for fun, what television shows or movies have used / showed or featured Flutter in any capacity?
We don't know.
That's a good. I have no idea. I can imagine though that it was.
Who's watching television?
Oh yeah. You mean Netflix
TV.
stream? You're talking about Netflix streams, or are you talking about Hulu? I don't know. What is this television thing you're talking about? I have no idea what those are.
I heard there's something to do with radio waves through the air.
Yeah.
Really? There's
analog.
Sometimes they have this big box behind the screen.
Oh yeah. Oh, the ones that shoot ray guns at you, right? Those?
Yeah, light rays, electron beams. Right.
Wow.
I was going to say I don't know of any, but I will say that it's an interesting question because I can see a lot of shows where they show like let's say like on a medical show where they show like some sort of screen, like some custom OS with like fake persons information, right? Or the screens where someone's hacking into something, they have to show some fake like system and that kind of or I could see how Flutter would be a really great language to really quickly build something just as a one-off for a TV show or a movie with a fake user interface, and you could do all the nice animations, right? And then I
know in the Star Trek realm for Next Generation, Michael Okuda was the science fiction art creator. And he used a lot of real computers and stuff to do that. And I bet right now he's going, man, if I only had Flutter, that would be so cool. I could have done some really, really slick interactive stuff with Flutter. But of course, now that's all over. All that stuff's gone. Or let's do movies, I guess. Yep. Huawei Mobile not support Flutter Google Map widget. Any way to implement support for Google Map? I know this exactly what this is because Huawei had to remove Google Play functionality from their devices due to US-China litigations, something
whatever. And in that thing, it means that there's no Google Play services on those devices, and Google Maps requires Google Play services. Thus, Google Maps does not work on those devices. And the answer to this is use a different mapping product.
Yeah, Open Map, all sorts of stuff out there.
There's OpenStreetMap. There's, in fact, if you literally type Flutter Map, I think there's a few different packages in pub.
There's a package that could use all the other ones too. So there's like a universal slick, and you can plug in whatever one you want to pay for.
It gives you like layers, and you can plug in any service you want. In fact, there's a bunch of services where you can actually download and generate tiles. You upload them to Google Cloud Storage, and then you can then surface them in your app and have your own mapping thing, completely not related to Google Maps or anything, if you really want to.
Right.
You know, I mean,
there are solutions. Google. Use Google to find non-Google solutions. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, was it Flutter Map? I mean, look, Leaflet.js. I mean, I'm going to bring it up quickly. Yeah. Look, Flutter_map. There's a Discord, the documentation. Shame the images don't appear, but yes, there's a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Flutter Map, Marker Cluster, Mapbox. Oh, yeah, there's Mapbox one, isn't there, as well?
Yeah. Mapbox is good.
There's a hell of them. I don't know what this tile caching is.
Wow.
More extensions for it. I mean, there's tons of stuff.
Yeah. Mapping is important on a mobile. So, yes, it's been done.
Yeah, the answer is Google Maps specifically is no, because it requires those things, and that's by license.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hold on.
Unless we're gonna get 100% native.
Sorry.
Implementation, which will never go to
that one.
Use Bing Map. There you go. Yeah, it's Microsoft instead. In fact, don't they have the similar problem because of US export laws? I don't know. Anyway, is there a recommended approach to secure the GCP service account JSON credentials, GCP API key in Flutter? So first of all, what are you trying to secure? so account JSON credentials. So are you making a? Oh my God, you're making a. Oh wait, what? Hang on.
Take a deep breath, Simon. Deep breath.
You're generating a service account, making a private key JSON file, and then you're trying to ship it in your app. Don't do that. And if you do that, you better make sure damn well that service account's iron rules are damn secure. They don't have access to any of the permissions on GCP. You do not want to leak that and then find out that service account has access to delete your entire database, for example. This is bad.
But if you're referring to the Google services JSON, there's nothing there which actually is so secure that you have to hide it.
Yeah. So, and this comes with the second part of this question, which says GCP API key in Flutter. The answer to that is API keys are not secret. They're used in every network call to the back end to identify it. What you should be doing is your security measures should be rotating those keys. So every quarter or every 6 months, or whatever you want. Every year, I don't care. But the point here is that you change those keys. Therefore, if it does get leaked or it does get misused, you generate a new one. Or you should at least have a process in place to generate a new one and get an app update quickly. So then you can get rid of the old one. So if someone does abuse it. But to be honest, the API keys in GCP can be locked down to bundle IDs on iOS and to signing keys on SHA hashes from signing keys on Android, and to referrer hosts, referrer names on web. So you can lock it down so that it can't be used. So that's all about securing your back-end infrastructure. Your API keys are shipped in your app. They are open to anyone to see. If they really want to, they can go see them. Right.
So I wonder if this question comes from the fact that we have a Flutterfire generator, which generates essentially these keys now. But if you look at the old way of doing stuff, you download from Firebase the Google services JSON, and you drop it into a folder of your Android app, and plist into your iOS folder, right? This is the old way of doing it, and these things should be there the way because there is nothing bad about it. These applications, when compiled, will be signed with a specific key. Or profile, and no one can actually forge it because this key and this profile will be checked when you're communicating with GCP.
The other thing to mention is that if you're using the Flutter Fire CLI generator, those strings that it gets, the API key, are actually shipped within your application binary. So they're very hard to locate, but you could always make a method in your Dart code and use some encryption, make it ship an encryption key, decrypt them on the fly, then put the decrypted strings in that, what's it called, Firebase options, and then do initialize Firebase. You can do that if you want to. It just seems like you're going overkill, because still, if someone has your app, they can then decompile, step through it. If they really wanted those things, they can go find them, right? Yeah, I don't know. Like it's, I get it, but also you should be protected on the server side anyway, right? All right, moving on. Train of thought. What are some best practices when setting the Gradle and plist files, setting up Android and iOS environment?
Do it right. Do it correctly.
I mean, I don't think there's any best practices I can think of. I mean, you want, it all depends on if you set up flavors and how you set those up to how you sort of handle your Gradle and plist files. But to be honest, I'd suggest that you just try and build. So forget about Flutter and just try and build an Android app, and to see how you use Gradle in those environments. Go read up about Gradle and how you build your app and what you change, because the Android DSL, that's the domain-specific language for setting up your Android build, as like about signing keys and how you use it all. But to be honest, what you get out of the box with Flutter is pretty damn good. Like, there's nothing special you need to do.
I mean, when you usually build an app, you have to put some release keys into place, because you don't have them unless you do the signing directly on the console, for example.
No, but actually, right? Flutter actually comes with support for that in the Gradle file. You add your key.properties file or whatever it is, and it just magically works. In the release information of Flutter, it tells you what to do. So like, there's nothing particularly, like, these are the things you normally do if you're building an Android app, but it kind of comes pre-configured out of the box. I will say that, like, maybe you can include some more things, like the Git hash in your, like guides to do it to properly do it.
But it's auto-generated mostly.
Yeah.
So we don't do that. We're just getting it done.
And if you, I will mention that you can just go open up your Android folder in Android Studio and edit the Gradle files with the, like, help. Like telling you that you've typed it in wrong and all that kind of stuff. It's fun stuff.
And you have to learn your language called Groovy to actually do it right.
Yep. Yeah, we're not doing that. Right. Yeah. Hopefully that helps. Sorry. Richard, are private packages the best way to include a feature like a calendar in different apps? Yeah.
I think this is talking about mono repos. Yeah, mono repos are cool. Private packages are cool.
Even if it's not mono repo, if you want to include, if you've got multiple apps and you want to include a feature, you can have them in separate repos, or you can have them in the same repo. But yes, it would be a separate package, because to include that functionality without copying and pasting the files, you're going to put it in a package so you can refer to it. So yes, make a separate package in a folder, which is the same as, like, Dart create -t package or whatever, and away you go. And then you can just include that folder. You use a go look up the pubspec YAML spec on dart.dev. There's like a page for it, and you can include a dependency as a local dependency using a path. You /packages/ whatever your package name is, and it'll just find that folder and include your package for you. But if you're going to do a mono repo, recommend you check out Melos, MELOS. It's a lovely tool that helps you manage a mono repo, and it actually generates overrides so that you can include things locally a lot easier. Anyway.
Yeah, it's a great package.
Next, let's get through the last few questions.
Yeah, get it home.
You guys just touched on classes. It reminds me of the next features of Dart. 1, class modifiers, and 2, inline classes. What do you guys think about it? Great addition.
Inline's coming. That's part of the short list.
Yeah, same as the class modifiers. That's like seal class, final class.
Oh, right. Yeah, I guess they both are coming.
All those class modifiers. We spoke about them. I think we spoke about them on every Humpday for the last 4 Humpdays in some fashion. But I will say that so any language change is I think is a good thing. They're really good, specifically Bob Nystrom, in terms of like improving the language and making sure it's just not like throw some stuff in and you know, they actually think it out very thoroughly. They're very good language developers.
Right.
Class modifiers. The one class modifier I dislike mainly from Java land is final. Having a final class. One of the problems was in a lot of Java packages and libraries is people would make their classes final, which meant that you could not extend them, you could not abstract them, you could not implement them, you could just do nothing with them. They are
Just
final.
copy the code and use it yourself.
And that's exactly what people would do. And that was the worst thing to do. You end up copying a bunch of Java files, removing final, and then including it that way, which is just like really hacky, really horrible, has other implications. So yeah, I think having final, it might be good in your own code base, but not for libraries, not for packages, when your idea is to make something that's going to be used by others, right?
Right.
You have other means to do that because you essentially can hide stuff when you're exporting the package and it's not there, right?
This is it. Like you start your class name with an underscore. Now it's private to your namespace. Done. There you go.
Yep.
Inline classes. We have inline functions right now. You can make functions inside functions. Same thing. It just gives you a namespace and gives you a way of making that private to that namespace. I'm not sure if I would use. I'm trying to think if I would actually use it. I can't think of. I can't think of a particular use case where I would use it. To be fair,
The
Like,
return
you use
value, you won't use it
Yeah,
in
but you-
return value because you will
No, but
use essentially our spread.
you would
return.
use inline. So in Java, you would use inline classes for things like listeners. So you might have like an interface that has 4 listeners, and the only way to actually easily use that or to a function maybe or extend it is to then make it in like private inline like class and implement those things in there, so it still has access to the scope, and then instantiate an instance of that and pass it over to as the handler or something.
So then this brings in a, do we really need it? Because can't you just drop the function and you have it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
now we have Lambda. Now we have other things. It's like, do we really need this? Like, I would prefer to like see things like records, like doing like with records and patterns. You could do a record of, let's say you need like four I don't know, listeners or 4 function callbacks, having like a record that supports that, and then have a pattern match on the other side that specifically says it has to be these types, and having that kind of flexibility to then compose it out of bits rather than having specific classes. But I guess we'll see. We'll see. All right. Next. No more bit. No, you're right. All right, go on. Separate UI from business logic. Do you prefer to place navigator of in UI page or business? Don't put navigator in business. It's not business. There you go. So there's your answer. If business logic, do you pass context to method or use navigator key? Neither. How's that? So I get your meaning for this, and it can be really complicated. I prefer to do if I need to do any sort of navigation on the back end, then I might produce an event, and that event is listened to by the front end that can then call navigator off, right? Does that kind of make sense? So basically, the business logic still has the behavior of navigating. You can still test that behavior of navigating, but when it actually comes to actually changing the widgets and the stack, that happens in navigator off on the front end. So you just like listen to a stream, and when those events come in, you can navigate. That's the kind of thing you want to do. The other thing that this separates UI and context to the appropriate places. Another thing you could do is pass a function to the back end to be called for whatever reason that can perform navigation. So on your front end, when your app starts up, you have a context. You say with access to the key in scope or something via closure, via scope access, you can pass a function that does navigate of or navigate key dot current context dot push whatever, right? That function can be passed to or set on your backend business logic, so that when something happens, it calls that function that then runs that front end function that then does the navigation. And again, this gives you that separation of concern that the navigation, the UI, and everything else is happening on the front end, but your business logic still has that represented in state on the back end. That's what I'd say. And Swav, do you agree, disagree, change?
I'm currently playing with essentially doing my navigation from my own Riverpod Manage Navigator 2 class. I'm not using any packages. I'm essentially using all the navigation logic is in this nice class, which actually does everything what it's supposed to, and I'm not relying even on a context. So I'm just essentially saying, give me my notifier, navigate me to home, done there. And if there is some logic like I want a timeout, yeah, it's gonna time out and it's gonna do the same thing, because what Navigator 2 gives you is you have essentially, you're building a widget which returns the navigation. So you can essentially put any logic you like into modify it, and this will gonna react automatically to what is supposed to be there. I got some outdated samples of it somewhere, about have to dig it out and actually make it useful again, because they are more than a year old, I think.
Yes, that'll be Riverpod 1 then.
Yeah.
Riverpod 1. Right, let's move on. Last question.
Yay.
Regarding platform plugin packages for Windows platform, I know that we can interface with Windows platform using C++. I would like to write my platform code in C#. Is this possible? Yes. There you go.
I haven't tried it actually.
So what you're looking for is nothing to do with plugins. So you forget plugins. You can write your code in C#, output it as a DLL file, which is a dynamic link library, which is dynamic code, dynamic library. And then you can access those functions that are exported from the dynamic library directly from Dart code using FFI, foreign function interface. And basically, just go look up FFI gen, and there's other ones, but basically you just say, based on this function name and these parameters, call that function, and it'll call into C# and it'll do it all normally. So yeah, FFI is what you're looking for, and you can go look up, like, honestly, it's the same as saying, how do I use C# code in a C++ application? It's the same thing. You export the functionality in a table from your dynamic link, and then your C++ code would then read that table and say, where are the functions, and it links them up. There you go. So in truth, FFI is what you're looking for. There you go. That was the last question.
Done.
Hopefully people found all our answers and nonsense chatting interesting.
Yeah.
We were trying to keep it short, but I think, yeah, okay.
This is short. This is sort of short, shorter than a couple of them.
2 hours 18. So, yeah, it's a bit longer than we wanted, but I think I was waffling a bit, so I apologize.
We got a lot of good stuff answered, and we still had, I turned away probably about 10 questions. So we really had even more that we could have kept doing. So I told them all, come back in 166 hours, guys. Yeah. Then we'll be here again. Yep. Next week.
Same time next week. You'll find us here in 166 hours.
Yep.
Swav, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure everyone enjoys your answers and finds them enlightening.
I don't know. And, let's go.
I think so. All right then. I think we're going to end it here. We're going to have a hard stop. So yeah, thanks very much, and we'll see you next week. Bye.